So, after the announcement of a Guild Wars 1 Reborn, I figured maybe it's time to get a further understanding of what Guild Wars 1 is. So this right here is a fairly recent, it's a couple months old now, video on Guild Wars 1 by C Mac. Guild Wars 1, a timeless classic MMORPG, okay? Let's check it
Fond
out.
memories and warm, fuzzy, nostalgic feelings that I still.
Let me just
Guild
start.
Wars 1. I grew up playing this game as a kid, and I can't even begin to tell you about all the fond memories and warm, fuzzy, nostalgic feelings that I still have for it, even to this day. But it's been a long time. It's been over 15 years since I last touched Guild Wars, and after seeing a few videos about it pop up on my recommended YouTube section, I decided that it was time to take a trip down memory lane and revisit this blast from the past. My goal for this video is simple.
Dude, once again, the more I watch about Guild Wars, the more I want to play Guild Wars, and now with Guild Wars 1 Reborn coming out, it might be the perfect time to just give it a try. And just based on the first 32 seconds of this video, by the way, those graphics right here are just up my alley. Apparently, Guild Wars Reborn has gotten some graphical improvements as well, but even here, this is pretty alright, man.
Convince everyone that Guild Wars is the greatest game that's ever been created. No,
Okay?
I'm kidding. I'm actually
No.
really interested to see if after all these years and a lot more gaming experience under my belt, if this game still holds up and is as good as I remember. Or if I simply just thought it was good because I was a kid and, well, it was the only MMORPG that my parents let me play. But Z-Mac, Guild Wars 1 isn't even a true MMORPG. Yeah, we'll get to that as well. And last but not least, I want to figure out what the active player base looks like. Are there still people playing the game? And if so, who are they? Why are they still here? Is it nostalgia, the community, the game itself, or something else entirely? How's it going, friends? My name is Z-Mac, and this is Looking for a New MMO. A series where I play through all sorts of different MMOs to help you figure out if one of them might be just the game you're looking for. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and as always, a huge shout out to my Patreons for supporting the channel throughout these creative works. I am truly honored and greatly appreciate your continued generosity. More information on how you can support the channel at the end of this video. Alright, let's get into it. Here's the scene. It's 2005 and the MMORPG genre is on the rise. Yes, it is a glorious time to be an MMO player. The golden age. RuneScape has been around now for a few years and World of Warcraft just exploded onto the scene in 2004. Oh, and I guess there's a couple more games going on as well. And in the midst of all of this commotion, a vision was born. A band of brothers, 3 developers with prior MMORPG experience set out to create a game that would break away from the MMO norms and forge a new path. One that would defy conventional thinking while still holding true to the heart and soul of MMORPGs. The game, of course, is Guild Wars 1. Back then, it was just called Guild Wars, but ever since this game came along, it's sort of an unsaid rule or common courtesy to always add the 1 to the end of it, just to make sure people don't get confused. And that band of brothers I mentioned before, those are the founders of ArenaNet, the developers behind the Guild Wars franchise. Set in the high fantasy world of Tyria, the game was released on April 28, 2005, and to many people's surprise, it was a smashing success. You have to understand, Guild Wars was viewed as an underdog in the eyes of its competition. ArenaNet was a brand new studio. Although it did boast a few developers with impressive credentials, there was still no proven track record at the time. Everything in the game was created and written from scratch. It didn't have the luxury of building off a previously established franchise. And to make matters worse, World of Warcraft had just been released 6 months prior to its release date. Talk about overcoming the odds. That is some steep competition. So, how did they do it? How did Guild Wars 1 manage to carve out a place for itself in a genre dominated by giants? Well, as you watch through the video, you'll start to pick up on the fact that Guild Wars has a very unique identity. It's not far-fetched to say there's really no other game like it. The first reason being, and it's the only reason I was even allowed to play it, the buy once, play forever model. Guild Wars offered a $50 flat rate and catered to online gamers, let's be honest, it was mostly the parents, that didn't want to commit to a monthly subscription fee. Of course, the majority of video games already operated in this manner, but for MMORPGs, pretty much all of them revolved around some form of recurring payment. Even though this was a risky marketing strategy, the plan worked. It succeeded in attracting a large player base that not only enjoyed the game, but became die-hard fans of the new franchise. And I'm happy to say that ArenaNet has stayed true to their original promise. To this day, Guild Wars 1 remains a buy-to-play game with active online servers, and right now you can actually purchase and download it on Steam. Now, the way that ArenaNet released the expansions is kind of cool, but also a little bit confusing. The original game is known as Prophecies, and for all new players, I would highly recommend starting there since, well, that's where it all began, and that's where you'll get the true vanilla Guild Wars experience. However, the devs released 2 more quote-unquote expansions called Factions and Nightfall, but they're technically not expansions because they have their own standalone campaigns, and you don't need to own Prophecies in order to play either of them. All 3 of these games are interchangeable. If you create a character on Prophecies, beat the game, and then decide that you want to use that same max level character for the Factions or Nightfall campaign, you can do that. But if you'd rather create a new character and start over on Factions or Nightfall, you can do that as well. And then there's this expansion, the Oddball. It's called Eye of the North, and for some reason, ArenaNet decided, you know what, let's confuse the crap out of people and make it so that this expansion actually requires a previous purchase in order to play. So yeah, you have to own at least one of the other 3 versions in order to experience Eye of the North. And let's be honest, it was probably just a marketing tactic. Now, you can purchase the games individually, but in my opinion, your best...
My question is, so if these are expansions, if I have an expansion and you don't, can we still play the game together? And is there then some content that you can't, like we can't play together because you don't have the expansion? Not like it's a big deal breaker, and apparently it looks like if you buy the Reforged version or the Reborn version, kind of forgot the name, if you buy that one, so like basically in Guild Wars 1 Classic, it looks like you get access to all 3 campaigns anyway, but are the expansions only campaign quests? Or do they add new dungeons, new raids, new content? Because that kind of like limits how much group gameplay you can do with other people if they need to have the expansion as well.
bet is to avoid all the headaches and just...
I really think this graphic though, these graphics right here looks really cool, especially if I can like move these elements around, because I don't want to have the level bar in the top left. I also don't want to have the enemy health bar in like the top middle. If I can move these things around, that is great.
Purchase the Guild Wars trilogy, which includes Prophecies, Factions, and Nightfall for $30. Or maybe less than that if it's on sale. That will give you somewhere around 100 hours of gameplay, and then if you really want to, you can snag the Eye of the North expansion for an extra $20. Alright, with all of that out of the way, let's get into some of the actual gameplay, starting with character creation. The first thing that you'll notice is that the devs offer players a unique option that I don't think I've seen in any other MMO that I've ever played. You can either create a role-playing character, which starts you at level 1 and takes you through the story and campaign, or you can skip all that and simply create a max level PvP character. Here's why this is a fantastic feature, and I wish we saw it more in other MMO titles. First, the game automatically appeals to a wider audience. Interested in PvP but not a huge fan of grinding for weeks on end to get to max level? No problem. From the moment you download the game, you can hop right into PvP and start off at a reasonably level playing field. No time investment required. Second, maybe you are a PvE player, but the campaign is starting to feel a little monotonous or stale. If you need a break and want to switch things up, guess what? You can. Just hop on over to a PvP character and start duking it out in one of the arenas with your friends. Finally, and probably the best thing about it, this feature opens up the door for players to experiment with all sorts of different builds and classes, which in Guild Wars are called professions, without the need for long-term.
That right there is going to confuse me so much, by the way. Having played WoW, where professions are basically alchemy, skinning, engineering, and those things, having to go like, classes are now professions. That's gonna confuse me so much. Now, thankfully, I have played Final Fantasy where the classes are called the jobs, so I probably will get over it quite fast, but still, it's going to be a little bit confusing. It's like mage is now your profession instead of your class. Do they have professions, like actual professions in Guild Wars then? Like herbalism, mining, skinning, do they have those?
Commitment. And let me tell you, there are a lot of different builds for you to try out, but we'll get more into that.
I swear, if they call mage a profession, and then they call herbalism a job, now we're gonna have a problem. Because this is so confusing, having played WoW and Final Fantasy.
Later. So you create your PvP character, go through some quick tutorial stuff, and this is all just a huge waste of time because there's no one here. Well, except for this one person. Excuse me, miss. How the heck is that tiny piece of fabric supposed to protect you from anything? Alright, so the PvP scene in Guild Wars 1 is pretty much dead. That's kind of disappointing because I have a lot of really fond memories just logging on with my PvP character after school, battling with friends, and having a good time. This place used to be packed. You never really had to wait for anything, but the game is 20 years old at this point, so I'm not exactly sure what I expected. Side note, I did a little bit of research and apparently you can catch some scheduled times where players coordinate together to hop into the different arenas. And there's also some planned out guild v guild action, but unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to showcase any of that in this video. That's okay though, because we still have the main entree of the game waiting for us, the role-playing character. I do have the option to play factions or Nightfall, but we're going to
The PvP problem, though, based on the game being old, is probably going to fix itself now that we're getting the reforged version. So basically Guild Wars Classic. I can already imagine that being super popular, by the way. Anybody who's more active in the Guild Wars scene than me, feel free to clue me in, either in chat or in the comments, about how popular this is actually going to be, because I really want to play. I've never played Guild Wars 1, I've also never played Guild Wars 2, but I feel like now that we are getting the classic version of Guild Wars 1, it's more of a natural progression to start with Guild Wars 1 and then possibly do Guild Wars 2.
stick with prophecies for now. Maybe if this video gets to 1,000 likes, I'll do an entire playthrough of the different game versions. That would be kind of crazy though. And here we have all of the different professions from the original game. A few standard options like the warrior, ranger, and monk, paired with some other unique picks such as the necromancer and mesmer. Personally, I'm going with the class that I started out with all those many years ago, the ranger. Character customization is not great, I'll be honest. Just a handful of lackluster presets to choose from, but you are able to dye your different pieces of gear from the get-go, so that's kind of cool. And now for our brave adventurer's name. I can't go with just ZMAC because the game requires me to use 2 or more words. Kind of lame. What are some of the names viewers have suggested to me in the past? There you have it, ladies and gentlemen, ZMAC and cheese. I click create and my gosh, the immense feelings of nostalgia are overwhelming. Seriously, just all the memories are flooding back. Players are welcomed into the game with a cinematic cutscene that displays a warm, bright, cozy world accompanied by a beautiful soundtrack and a lovely voice narration. The camera pans over the city of Ascalon and it seems like all is right with the world, except for the fact that the narrator foreshadows some sort of impending doom. Something to do with these char creatures attacking the city, which motivates the king to find and recruit the heroes that will lead the kingdom to glory, which is the part of the story where I come in. The camera zooms in on my character, and oh, I forgot, you can actually move around with the left click mouse button as well as the standard WASD. Man, I forgot how beautiful this game really was for its time. Coming from RuneScape, these graphics were like mind-blowing in 2005. I distinctly remember calling my dad into the office to show him how realistic and gorgeous these graphics looked. Alright, enough of my gushing. Quest NPCs are indicated by these green exclamation points above their heads, so I speak with the town crier and he tells me that Sir Titus has some good news for me. And really quick, I should point out that Guild Wars 1 does not use spacebar to jump. In fact, there's not an option for jumping at all. As a kid, I didn't really think much of this, but now, well, it does take some getting used to. And I'd imagine that if a Guild Wars 2 player hopped into this game with no prior experience, they'd probably just about lose their minds, considering the fact that ArenaNet placed such a heavy emphasis on vertical movement in their MMO sequel. After speaking with Titus, he instructs me to meet up with Artemis the Ranger in Lakeside County because apparently she can show me a trick or two. On my way there, I noticed something that took me by surprise. There's actually quite a few people online. I mean, don't get me wrong, we're not crashing the servers, but still, for a 20-year-old MMO, it's a respectable amount. Not right?
Yeah, like for this game being 20-year-old, especially if the servers are also 20 years old, that is a decent amount right there, man. And I can once again just imagine the Reborn servers being even more popular, man. That could be crazy. I also want to see what the graphical updates are going to look like, because this game right here looks good, but like he says, it looks good for its time. And they have done some UI improvements and stuff for the classic version coming out, right? Which I'm looking forward to seeing what that looks like compared to this.
Really sure what's going on over here. Whoa, check out some of these outfits. Those are sick. Now, as I head out the front gate, you'll notice a couple different things. First off, Guild Wars 1 is not a seamless open world. It's separated by instance zones that require a loading screen anytime that you travel from one zone to another. The second thing you'll notice is that I'm alone. A pop-up text appears in the top left corner of the screen that says when you adventure outside of town, you get your own private copy of the world. To play with a friend, simply form a party together before leaving town. So yeah, if you didn't already know this.
Okay, so the world is basically, it's basically single player unless you invite somebody. And if you invite them, they can be in the same... Okay, is that going to be there in Classic as well? Not sure if I like or don't like that.
Guild Wars is not a traditional open world MMORPG as some might define it. Once you leave an outpost or major city, you won't be able to see or run into other players, which for many people is automatically a huge turnoff. Of course, just as it is with everything, there are some advantages as well as disadvantages to this unique game design. And we'll touch on both of those as we continue with the video. The game might be better described as an online co-op RPG, although I would argue there are still many MMO elements sprinkled in. Oh, and by the way, apart from main story cinematic cutscenes, there's no voice acting for quests. Everything is presented to players through a dialogue text box. Artemis has instructed me to kill some scales down by the river because allegedly they've been capturing humans and, well, eating them. It's pretty messed up, guys. This is where we get our first glimpse of combat. Simply left click to attack, yellow numbers are damage given, red numbers are damage received. And there you have it. Turn the quest into Artemis and she rewards me with a couple of skills. Now, in my opinion, skills are one of the defining features of Guild Wars 1. Not because of their exclusivity, but because of their unique implementation when compared to other games. Each player has an action bar with only 8 slots. At first, that seems incredibly limiting, and that's because it is. But what you find out as you progress through the leveling process is that this restriction lends itself to a key component of the game: strategy. You see, Guild Wars offers players hundreds of different class-specific skills that they can unlock and slot into their action bar, creating almost an infinite amount of build combinations. And since there are only 8 slots, every single skill that a player chooses really matters. It carries a lot of weight to it. It's not like World of Warcraft where you can just add on more action bars to your screen. Oh, and you can only change out your skills when you're in an outpost or city, so you really have to think carefully about it. So even though it's simpler and requires less mechanical skill as some other MMORPGs, there's an added element of strategy to Guild Wars 1 which I absolutely love. And on top of that, the devs added a little twist that I don't think I've experienced in many other MMOs, if any: secondary professions. And I'm not talking about cooking or weaponsmithing. I'm talking about the ability to double up on skills from a different class. So instead of just being a ranger, I could...
Yo, as somebody who's played Arcade a lot, I love that, by the way. Arcade, basically, you chose 3 specs, and they made your class. So you could be like a hunter tank warrior, or a hunter warrior mage, and just have skills from all 3 of them. I think this right here sounds really cool. Being able to get at least some skills from a different, well, I'm gonna keep calling it class, by the way, but a different profession, I guess, or a different class, yeah.
I can be a ranger necromancer, hunting down enemy mobs with my bow and then raising them up to form my own army of the undead. It's pretty freaking cool, and all of the professions can be combined, which offers players even more freedom and creativity when developing their unique builds. You'll want to choose carefully though. It is possible to change your secondary at some point, but that's not until towards the end of the game. So what you choose is pretty much what you'll be stuck with for the majority of your time playing. The nice thing is that Guild Wars allows players to speak with all of the different trainers to test out the different class combinations, which I would highly recommend doing, especially if it's your first time playing the game. Just make sure that if you complete their quests, you don't accidentally click on the option that says, "Yes, I'm ready to become a fill in the blank." For me, this is skipping ahead a little bit, but I decided to go with the Elementalist. The Ranger is a good class for single target damage, but I want to add a little AoE capabilities to my tool belt as well. I can't remember if this is a good strategy or not, but we're already here, so I'm sticking with it. Yes, stand there and burn inside my rain of fire. Okay, back to where we were. Let's talk about this little player tip right here. I'll be honest, it kind of rubs me the wrong way, and I'm not a huge fan of it. Basically, I've been playing a lot of classic WoW lately, and a huge part of the game is just running around killing mobs, which can be relaxing and a lot of fun. So naturally, I start doing that, and the devs inform me, if you focus on completing quests and missions, you can level up faster than you would from just hunting monsters. Now, on one hand, I get it. They want to guide players through the game in a way that they think will be best. But on the other hand, what if I don't care about leveling up fast or playing in a specific optimal manner? This tip kind of feels like they're discouraging me from playing the game how I want. And it works. I almost immediately stop killing the mobs to continue with my questing. And from that point on, I don't ever go out in search of mobs to kill just for fun ever again, which is kind of sad now that I think about it, but we'll get more into that later. Ugh, dude, there are so many moments where I can't help but stop and soak in the scenery. It's just such a beautiful game. Speaking of, this is probably one of the most iconic and nostalgic views within Guild Wars 1. Ashford Village. Straw-roofed cottages, green rolling hills, a picturesque waterfall in the distance. I mean, you can't get much more pleasant and cozy fantasy vibes from a video game than that. I absolutely love it. Alright, since the devs want us to focus on it so much, let's continue with our questing. Speak with Devona, she rewards me with some XP, instructs me to visit Myrick the Scribe in Ashford Abbey, and I also grab a couple of these side quests. Miller Upton here says he isn't able to help me out until I get rid of these bees that are pestering him. It's actually a really fun concept. I'm supposed to pick up this massive honeycomb and lure the swarms of bees across the bridge, and oh dear, the bees are stuck. No matter what I do or how many times I try to complete this quest, one or more of the swarms of bees get stuck right at the start of this bridge. Oh well. Bugs aside, pun intended, Guild Wars 1 does have some creative questing. It's not all kill 10 of this mob type or collect 5 of these quest items, although those do exist as well. Oftentimes you'll be asked to defend an area or a specific person, and there's even light puzzles offered on occasion. One thing that's important to note is that quests are compartmentalized in your log as primary quests and regional side quests. So if you're a completionist wanting to take your time and complete everything that you possibly can, you're free to do that. And you'll find a lot of whimsical, fun side quests and characters along your journey. But if you'd rather just stick to the main story, you can do that as well. The devs have made it clear to players which quests to focus on specifically. And unless you don't care about the story at all, you'll want to take the time to read the dialogue for any of these primary quests. One of my biggest gripes with the game is that you can actually fly through it without reading anything due to the quest navigation system. It pretty much holds your hand the entire way. As soon as you accept a quest, you know exactly where to go, even if you don't read the text, because a little green directional arrow or star will pop up on your minimap. On top of that, Guild Wars implements an instant travel system that is about as limitless as it gets. No matter where you are in the world, you can always open up your map and travel to any city or outpost instantly without any cost. Now, I understand this is purely preferential. For some people, that sounds great, but in my experience, players tend to enjoy and get more out of a game when quest navigation and world travel is a little more immersive and grounded. What do I mean by that? Well, if the devs do all the work for the player and there's very little effort or exploration involved in the process, sure, it will be faster, easier, more convenient, but it will also be much less rewarding. And in terms of
I feel like, having played Classic WoW a lot myself, when you have to work for something, it feels better when you get to the point. And in Classic WoW as well, instead of just teleporting around and instantly taking you to the next place, like, there are 13-minute flight paths. It promotes taking a break from the game, but also you have to travel a lot in the game itself when you're traveling from zone to zone. It makes you just like go out and explore the game, basically. It's way less about efficiency and optimizing unless you do it yourself. The game never really tells you to be efficient or tells you to optimize. The game gives you a quest and it's your job to get to wherever the quest tells you to go, right? Now, of course, add-ons will optimize the game for you, and people themselves are optimizing the fun out of the game by just like making everything a race to max level. You follow an arrow, but the game itself never does that. It's third-party add-ons or people's mentality doing it. But the game itself is basically, here, you have a quest, go and do some stuff, find things out.
fast travel without any cost, in my opinion, that is a trade-off between immersion and convenience.
Yeah.
Of course, we all play video games to relax, have some fun, and
the cool thing about that is that it respects your time, but once again, it's a trade-off where it respects your time, it takes you to where you want to be faster, but you're experiencing less of the world and you're exploring less.
escape reality. We don't want games to be exactly like real life. No fast travel options would be awful, but we still want them to feel relatable and grounded. And there's nothing relatable or grounded about traveling anywhere at any time without any cost at the click of a mouse button, especially since there's no logical explanation as to how this is possible. Like, it's not a
Yeah, like, if I haven't played Guild Wars 1, so I'm just talking out of my ass here, by the way, but if I can teleport to any city at any point from anywhere, that's going to be a little bit immersion breaking. Because like in Classic WoW, you can teleport every now and then, either from a mage portaling you around, or a couple of other teleports as well. I mean, there are a couple of teleports that people shouldn't do and shouldn't know about, but I mean, if you log out on a certain stone, you can teleport to a different zone, if you know where to log out and how it works. And mages can also do the same trick underground to reappear in a different zone. But yeah, like, for the most part, you take a mage portal to a capital city, and in that case it logically makes sense because the mages are creating the portal for you. Other than that, you have zeppelins that can fly you directly from one city to the next, which is also basically makes sense. It's a zeppelin, right? Or you have flight paths. So I feel like it's a perfect compromise, allowing you to both travel fast, but it also makes sense in the game itself. And like I just said, some flight paths are up to 13 minutes long, I think, in Classic. Zeppelins are way faster, and mage portals are instant, but then you need to have a mage, or some mage needs to portal you, and it's only to capital cities.
part of the story at all. The only thing we're told is consult your map and double click on a location to travel there. Why? Because it's a video game and there are no rules. It just feels cheap, you know? And every time it happens, our minds are subconsciously taken out of the immersion. Like I said, I know this is based on preference. Some people will agree with me, and others will think I'm a complete idiot with no sense of game knowledge whatsoever. And that's okay. Anyways, enough of my rambling. I helped Devona fend off some invading Grawl to protect Ashford, and by that I mean she basically does everything while I do my best to just stay alive. Complete the quest and I find out that the Char might actually be the provokers behind the attack. Also, I hit level 3, so let's go ahead and talk about that. While leveling in Guild Wars does strengthen your character, it's not necessarily the primary objective of the game. In fact, the devs felt so strongly about moving away from this mindset that they set the max level to only 20. That's right, level 20. And it doesn't really take that long to get there, at least not when you compare it to some of its MMO counterparts. They really wanted player skill, team strategy, and build creativity to matter more than raw level gear stats, power creep, and endless progression, which I can appreciate. By capping at 20, they ensure that everyone can quickly reach the same playing field, especially for PvP, which was a major focus back in the day. The leveling system is centered around attribute points, and it's relatively simple. Whenever you level up, gain some attribute points and slot them into your primary or secondary profession attributes. Some of these attributes boost baseline player stats, while others are directly linked to your skills, making them more and more powerful as you progress. One thing that I like about the Guild Wars attribute system is that as long as you're in a city or outpost, you can readjust your attribute points for free whenever you want. Again, it all comes back to this idea of player freedom and build creativity. Oh, I forgot to mention, weapons are not class specific. Of course, there are certain weapons that will complement your profession and build more appropriately, but if you want to run around living out your dream as a mage wielding a two-handed great axe, by golly, do it. And I think that's great. Funnily enough, as players started testing out these wacky
That's a great, but that's gonna be so weird, dude. Imagine being, like you said, a mage using a two-handed sword or a two-handed axe. That would be so stupid. But also, what if there's some cool builds that actually make that work, and then suddenly you're a battle mage? Something that people have been wanting in WoW for a long time, like a melee mage combination, a battle mage. Could be kinda cool, man, if they somehow make it work.
off-meta builds, they would sometimes come across stuff that was actually incredibly strong. The 55 HP monk, for example, or one of my personal favorites, the bunny thumper. Not sure exactly how it got its name, but it's what you get when you mix a ranger, a warhammer, and a ferocious furry companion. The change to class-specific weapons, along with the limited skill bar customization and removal of the option for a secondary profession, are some of the main reasons why so many Guild Wars 1 players were turned off by its successor, Guild Wars 2. And it's understandable. Without these key components, Guild Wars lost a large part of its original identity and what made the game so unique. Some people just could not get on board with these changes, and that's why you still see a lot of lifelong Guild Wars 1 players to this day. Apparently, the reason these changes were implemented is because the devs had such a difficult time balancing the PvP, which makes sense. Thousands
Yeah, like, when you give people the freedom to combine so many things, including classes and making subclasses, or combining abilities from classes, the more options you give people, the more difficult it will be to balance. It sounds like a balancing nightmare, so I can see why for Guild Wars 2 they took a different approach, but having this approach in Guild Wars 1, it sounds super cool, and at a certain point I would rather have something be cool than be balanced. In Arcade as well, a game that I mentioned already in this React video, is that you could combine 3 classes to make one. Like, you combined 3 specs to make a class, and we saw definite metas over there as well. Now, the meta usually changed a little bit from season to season, and also from style of gameplay, so 1v1 had one meta, 2v2 had a different one, and also certain counters existed for every single meta, right? So Dagger Spell was insane, and then Stone Arrow was also insane, and you put those two against each other, one really overpowered the other one, depending on both skill and gameplay, and also talent choices. Certain talents would make it so that you were really good against this thing, but really bad against the other one.
of skills and build combinations sounds like a nightmare to manage. But as far as I know, the PvP in Guild Wars 2 never received the same amount of praise that was once given to the original Guild Wars. So you can make of that what you will. After running around, questing, and unlocking some additional skills, I make my way back to Ascalon City and speak with Sir Titus, who tells me that we are mustering our forces against the Char. He asks me if I'm ready to go and warns me that once we leave, there will be no turning back. What does he mean by that? Well, it might come as a surprise to you to find out that everything you've seen so far is simply the tutorial or starting area. It's known as the pre-searing, and even though there aren't separate starting areas for each profession, this place has so much to offer. It's a beloved region for all veteran Guild Wars players. So much so that some people create characters that are restricted to only playing in the pre-searing portion of the game. They're even able to get their characters to max level. I've never personally done this, and I'm not going to be doing that with this video, but if you create a character right now, you'll likely find some people standing around in Ascalon City, level 20, just flexing on all of the level 1 peons. If that's not player-based loyalty, I don't know what is. Before I head to the mainland, there's still a couple things I'd like to do. My advice is don't be too quick to rush out of here. Once you leave, you cannot come back. And apart from it just being a peaceful, beautiful zone, there's also a decent amount of skills, quests, and rewards that will benefit you going forward if you take the time to find them. I am determined to complete this quest with the swarms of bees. This time around, I go incredibly slow, walk backwards the entire time, and they get stuck again. All right, I'm done with that. The real reason I don't want to leave just yet is because I need to acquire my pet. That's right, the ranger profession gives you the ability to charm animals and turn them into your pet to fight alongside.
I was gonna ask about this, but I purposely didn't in case he covered it later in the video, because so far, in these 26 minutes that I've seen, I have never seen him have a pet. So I started to wonder, is Ranger in Guild Wars a petless Ranger? But I guess it isn't, and I mean, that's cool.
You and do your bidding, and with certain builds they can actually deal a considerable amount of damage. So now I've got my single target damage from the bow, my AoE spell damage, and my pet dealing some damage as well. Oh yeah, baby, it's good to be a ranger. After reaching level 5 and completing a couple more quests, I decide that it's time to help defend the city and join in the fight against the Char. So I click on I am ready to leave everything behind, and here we go. My player is then transported to an instance where I join up with Prince Rurik to cast these treacherous foes out of our land. You'll notice that I entered without any teammates, but all of a sudden now I have 3 teammates, but they're not actually real players. They are the Guild Wars henchmen. See, ArenaNet was smart enough to understand that at some point it would be difficult to join up with other players. So they created a solution to the problem before it even happened. The henchmen. After the tutorial area, these NPCs are available in all cities and outposts throughout your entire playthrough, and they level up.
Is this basically NPCs, so there's followers and stuff? Because like in WoW right now, in the Warbit Inn, we got something called follower dungeons, where you basically have NPCs helping you in dungeons. Are you telling me Guild Wars 1 had this like 20 years ago, and WoW implemented this 2 years ago? Or more like 1.5 years ago. It's been 1.5 years, and we finally got follower dungeons. And they've had it for 20 years. So there's no way, bro. Because what he's describing here and what these NPCs look like, this is follower dungeons, but not even excluded to only dungeons. That's crazy.
As you continue to progress to higher difficulty zones. They're not always as good as having actual human teammates on your side, although there are exceptions to that rule, but they're definitely better than nothing. And trust me, we will soon find out that it's a really good thing these henchmen are in the game. As we run through these tunnels, taking out all the mobs along the way, we end up facing a named Char boss. We take him down with ease, and then we get another cinematic cutscene. Despite our best efforts, the Char have been building in secret a weapon of mass destruction. Once unleashed, Ascalon is destroyed, and the world of Tyria will never be the same again. This is where the true...
Somebody please tell me that he's the one saying Ascalon wrong, because I said Ascalon. It's ASC. Isn't that like Ascalon, or is it Ascalon? Anybody who's more interested in Guild Wars, not more interested, more invested. Somebody who's actually played Guild Wars for a while. Because for me, I'm just a outside person looking in and wanting to play Guild Wars, haven't played yet. Ascalon versus Ascalon.
story begins. So now we skip ahead to 2 years later and spawn in the exact same
Ooh.
spot as the start of the game. However, the world has been totally transformed, and not for the better. What once was a vibrant, lush, green landscape beaming with life now looks more like a deserted, apocalyptic wasteland. The plants and trees are all dead, the sky has turned into a murky brown fog, and Captain Ostrich stands at the ready. He instructs me to head to Ascalon City to speak with War Master Titus. And here's where the video gets a little bit depressing. As I enter the city, or at least what remains of it, there is virtually no one here. The city is almost completely empty. Now, Ascalon was never the most popular hangout for players back in the day, but there were usually a good amount of people running around. This does not bode well for my initial question, are there still people playing this game? Don't worry though, the story doesn't end here, and my mission for finding the active player base is not over yet. After speaking with Titus and furthering the main story quest, I make a point to stop at the skills trainer. Quest rewards are not the only way to obtain new skills in Guild Wars 1. You can also acquire them by visiting these skill trainer NPCs found in towns and outposts throughout the game. To purchase a skill, you need gold and skill points, which are earned by leveling up and completing content. The trainers offer skills based on your character's professions and story progression, and prices increase with each skill you buy. You can also purchase skill tomes from other players, or if you're far enough along, you can loot them for yourself, but we won't get into that. Lastly, we can't discuss learning new skills without mentioning the coveted, all-powerful gold-bordered wonders, the
Something I want to ask about though is the action bars. Because like what I'm seeing here is that he has 8 action bar buttons. Does that expand? Can you have more than 8? Because if I have to choose and only have 8 down there, 1 even seems to maybe be a potion on the button as well. Not completely sure if I'm seeing the icon wrong. But I need more buttons. There's no way I'm only gonna have 8 buttons.
elite skills. These
Never mind, I'm seeing something in the top left.
bad boys are obtained by using something called a signet of capture on a named boss that uses the desired elite skill.
That being said, the top left seems to not be anything he's clicking. Because like when he's clicking number 1, that changes one of the buttons in the top left. So if anything, that seems to be an aura displaying, or a buff displacement, like displaying buffs.
To do this, you must equip the signet, find and defeat the correct boss, then use that signet to capture the skill from their list. Each elite skill is tied to a specific boss, and there are over 200 of them in the game. So instead of spending tons of time chasing gear, a lot of people are chasing elite skills. It's an absolute dream for all of the completionists out there. It's kind of like Shadow of Mordor, where you're hunting down all of these named bosses and checking them off the list. And some of them can be extremely challenging, so you'll likely want to group up with some friends, or at the very least bring some henchmen along with you. Now, I'm not going to cover all of my time playing through the game because that would require a whole separate video. As I mentioned before, maybe if this video gets 1,000 likes, I'll consider doing a full playthrough, but for now, I'm just going to cover some of the highlights. The progression through Guild Wars is unique, that is for sure. You first have the quote-unquote open world, where you'll complete your primary quests as well as any of the side quests that you so choose. The reason I put open world in quotations is because Guild Wars is actually relatively closed off. As you're running around, it doesn't take long to learn that you cannot go wherever you'd like. Most of the paths are extremely limited. The game uses mountains, cliffs, walls, rivers, and other terrain to funnel players in specific directions. And you'll often find yourself playing the guessing game, can I walk down this slope or not? Which leads to a very important point. Guild Wars 1 is not a sandbox MMO, not even close. This game is extremely linear in nature. That's not to say there aren't any opportunities for exploration and discovery, because there are, but it's quite limited when compared with other MMOs. The game is forward-facing. The devs want you to play through the main story and travel in a specific direction. This concept is even more apparent when you look at the other main form of progression, missions. Missions are basically instance group dungeons, but instead of being something optional that adds to the story to complete for fun or just to get some good loot, the missions in Guild Wars are mandatory. They are not only a part of the story, they are the main story. It's not even possible to unlock the full map of Tyria without progressing the campaign through missions. And this is why many people would categorize Guild Wars 1 as more of a classic adventure RPG with online capabilities rather than an MMORPG. But I digress. The missions can be a ton of fun, especially if you're able to play with some actual friends. There's a bunch of mobs and named bosses to kill, puzzles to solve, stories to unlock, and after successfully completing each one, you'll progress through the game. Sometimes you'll end up at the location for the next mission, other times it will be a town or outpost where you have to venture into the world and complete primary quests, which will then lead you to the location of the next mission. Now, as fun as these missions can be, Guild Wars can also be incredibly frustrating. As I mentioned earlier, there is a lot of strategy involved in this game. It's not uncommon for you and your team to get wiped in combat. The enemy mobs aren't just some doormats that you can walk all over. No, they're relatively smart, and to make matters worse, they actually get to use the in-game profession skills as well. Meaning that if I'm fighting a ranger mob, I can see when he uses his skills, and it might even be one of the same skills that I have equipped in my action bar. And don't even get me started about healers. Oftentimes you'll find yourself in a fight where the enemy has multiple healers and it just turns into a stalemate because neither side is able to deal enough damage before the healers restore everyone's HP bars. And in that situation, you just have to run away, maybe head back to an outpost to switch up your build and try again. And in the missions, if your team gets wiped, you have to start the entire thing all over again. Some of them are short, so it's not a big deal, but others can take a while. So yeah, it keeps you on your toes. In the open world, if your team dies, it's kind of brutal. Everyone receives a minus 15% stat debuff. So whatever challenge you were facing and you weren't able to complete it at full strength, yeah, now you have to try and do it again with less available HP and energy. It sucks, especially since some of the instance zones aren't directly connected to an outpost. Meaning, if you fought your way through an entire zone in order to get to the one that you're now in and then you die, now you have to either figure out a way to make it through with less HP or return to the nearest town and do it all over again. Yeah, like I said, the game can be very frustrating. But since it offers players more of a challenge, it can also be incredibly rewarding, which is just one more reason why certain people love this game. One thing to note is that there aren't any trade skills or professions. The crafting is simplified down to acquire X amount of materials and pay a fee to upgrade your gear. If you're looking for no-lifing fishing or mining into the early morning hours, this is not the game for you. Definitely look elsewhere. As you complete more of the missions and progress through the campaign, you'll unlock different portions of the map. And the devs do a great job of offering players a variety of different landscapes. The Ascalon wastelands, the snowy Shiver Peak mountains, home of the dwarves, the coasts of Creta, the Crystal Desert. It really does feel like
yo, this winter biome looks crazy though. I can already imagine this, by the way, on Reborn, with improved graphics as well. I know that maybe you're not as excited as I am, but like winter biomes in games in general, I love them. Arcade as well, like the dwarf starter zone was great, like having winter elements, stuff like that. Just it all looks so great, man. And here as well, I like this. It's obviously you can see it's old graphics, but for the time, this is crazy. And if the Reborn, or basically, I'm going to call it Classic. If Guild Wars Classic has improved graphics with more like today's graphics, this zone could be insane.
you're traveling across this fantasy world to embark on an epic adventure. Pair that with the gorgeous soundtrack composed by Jeremy Soule, and you've got yourself a real masterpiece. Oh, and don't think that I forgot about my search for the active player base. There are still a lot of people playing the game. You just have to know where to find them. First off, I figured out that at the different mission outposts, you can travel to a place called Embark Beach, a sort of central hub where players from all the different campaigns can come together to join groups and help each other out. I ended up using this feature a lot because I was kind of tired of playing with just henchmen. Next up, I was really happy to find that there's still a small little community of people that like to hang out in Lion's Arch. This was one of my favorite lounging spots when I was younger. I was definitely
Yo, again, I am very impressed by the visuals here. Especially when taken into consideration 20-year-old game. This looks great, honestly.
Only getting all
And like the magical-ish style of the elements around here as well. Man, dude.
the nostalgia vibes running around the city again. And I even managed to
Yeah.
stumble upon a group of players throwing a town party. There was music, fireworks,
Oh.
and a whole bunch of dancing. It was pretty dang awesome. And last but not least, I became friends with a guy named Thanos Grom who kind of took me under his wing. I never told him that I'm a YouTuber. He simply is just a really nice guy that was excited to help me out. Truthfully, even though I played the game a lot as a kid, there's still a lot of stuff that I don't know or understand. In fact, I don't think I even finished the original Prophecies campaign, and I know for a fact that I never played through Factions or Nightfall. I always just got distracted with the PvP side of things. So having someone to help me out and guide me along was really great. When I asked him about the active player base, he basically said, "Let me show you." And when he did, I was shocked. Holy crap, there are still a ton of people playing. Sure, it's a smaller population than some of the big name MMOs, but it made me really happy to see so many players all gathered in one place. It kind of makes sense why I couldn't find them. Since Nightfall was the final version of the game that was released, most veteran players took to it as the place to hang out, find groups, and trade. Kamadan, the Jewel of Istan is what it's called. So that brings us back to the original question. Why are these people still here? Well, after meeting and chatting with a variety of different people, I think it's clear that nostalgia and growing up with the game does play a role, but there's a couple other things I picked up on. First off, even though its successor Guild Wars 2 was widely celebrated by the greater MMORPG community, a lot, and I mean a lot of Guild Wars 1 players were incredibly disappointed with the drastic change of direction the devs decided to take. If you look back at this video on all the things that are unique about Guild Wars 1, the features that give it a real sense of identity, pretty much all of them were done away with. The 8-bar skill system, secondary professions, max level at 20, the attribute point system, instance zones, the option to create a PvP only character, story driven missions, and I'm sure the hardcore Guild Wars 1 enthusiasts have even more things that they could go on about. The point being, Guild Wars 2 doesn't really feel like a sequel of Guild Wars 1 at all. It feels like a totally different game that used the Guild Wars franchise title and then slapped the number 2 on it. And I have to say, I agree with them. And I understand why many Guild Wars 1 veterans wouldn't want to make the switch. I am not saying Guild Wars 2 is a bad MMORPG. I'm just saying that the two games are very different, and it's not surprising to me that the original Guild Wars audience are turned off by the sequel. Now, on a more positive note, I think there's another reason why so many people have stuck around that goes beyond the surface level game features and personal preferences. This game has been out for 20 years, and many of the players have built lifelong connections with others in the community. In some ways, they've grown up together. A lot of them don't even really play the game anymore per se. They pretty much just stand around in populated areas, hanging out with their friends, whether that be in-game chat or Discord, just using it as an online chat room while they do something else on the other monitor. And since it has become a smaller population of people, many of the community members actually recognize one another by name whenever they see each other. It actually happened one time where Thanos and I were running around Kamadan when someone stopped him to just say hello and see how he was doing, which is really cool. Everyone wants to belong somewhere, and for the remaining community members in Guild Wars 1, they've found their place. Their people in the lands of Tyria. No, it's not boasting record concurrent player numbers or offering flashy new expansion content, but to them, it's not about that. This is their home, and I wouldn't be surprised if 5, 10, 15 years from now, they're still logging on every so often to catch up with lifelong friends. So, Guild Wars 1, do I still think it's a good game? Of course. Yes, it's old, and a lot of the systems and mechanics are dated, but it's still...
I will say, once again, a lot of the mechanics might be dated, the graphics as well, but the graphics still, to this day, what I'm looking at right here, this is pretty okay. Especially when looking at it through the nostalgic lens of knowing it's an older game. And then also, if they have improved graphics in the classic version, that is great. But for the mechanics and stuff in the game as well, Guild Wars was way ahead of its time. The, were they called mercenaries, or whatever the name was, for the followers he had, the follower NPCs, right? World of Warcraft just took that same system in their recent expansion, which is like 1.5 years ago. So like Guild Wars was 20 years ahead of WoW on those followers. Which is crazy, like follower NPCs, and WoW only has them in dungeons, not even in zones, only dungeons, not other group content, only for certain dungeons. And yeah, like many of these things, also being able to choose a couple of abilities from different classes is such a cool thing, and could make each player unique as well. Because sure, you can be a ranger, but by combining it with a different job as well, or a different skill, or they call it professions, right? And getting abilities from a magic person, from a wizard, from a mage or something, you can basically customize your profession to suit you and your playstyle. Which, if you're not just following the meta, that can be really cool, and you can make your own class basically. I really like it, by the way.
Good. If you're looking for a fun, slower paced strategy adventure online RPG paired with a rich, tight-knit online community, I definitely think it's worth giving the game a try. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hats off to you if you made it through the entire video. I know it was a long one, but it's a really special game to me and I didn't want to rush through it. Again, a huge shout out to my Patreons for supporting the channel. I greatly appreciate your continued generosity. If you'd like to see how you can help me achieve my dreams and become a part of the Patreon family, be sure to click on the link listed in the description below. You can support the channel for as little as $3 a month. Any and all contributions are much appreciated. Thank you again, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
That was a good video, by the way, on Guild Wars 1, especially with the announcement of Guild Wars 1. I call it Classic, but it's Guild Wars Reforged as well. Guild Wars 1 is going to be more relevant than ever, and seeing a video like this, going through Guild Wars 1, more of the gameplay and just about everything, that was a long video as well, by the way, but very chill vibes and very both informative and entertaining at the same time, so hopefully you guys enjoyed it as well.